This is Tibet in the 1930s, a beautiful isolated land high up in the mountain range of the Himalayas. Surrounded by the empires of Britain and China, and yet still almost completely untouched by the outside world. Tibet is now most famous for its leader, the Dalai Lama, who was forced into exile nearly 50 years ago. This treasure trove of rare colour films, filmed by British, Chinese and Tibetans who lived through these times, have been preserved by the British Film Institute. These films allow us to glimpse into a world which has almost entirely disappeared, to a time before the Dalai Lama and his people lost their country.
Oh, father! I think my father.
The Dalai Lama escaped to India in 1959 and, along with the Tibetan government in exile, is based in McLeodganj in northern India. To understand how Tibet was lost and why the Dalai Lama must live in exile, we have to look back to a time when Tibet was a free nation. This is Lhasa, the capital of Tibet, in the early 1940s. This film is of the main shopping street known as the Barkhor. Despite being shot in the 20th century, it looks medieval. Hardly surprising given its geographical position in the Himalayas. It was almost impossible to reach and so remained frozen in time. Namgyal Takla lived in Tibet in the 1940s.
We had the huge mountains surrounding Tibet, and then we were inside this mountain, isolated. And we had the big Russia, China, Britain around us. And it was the policy to be kept, this country to be kept a buffer state, a sort of a zone where the big powers will not meet. And it was, we lived in the 20th century, we maybe have lived like we were in the 16th century.
Originally nomadic, Tibetan society became feudal and deeply religious. The introduction of Buddhism to Tibet had a profound effect on both its culture and traditions. Ruled by a dual system combining aristocratic families and Buddhist monks, the government's main function was to maintain the religious state. Any attempts to modernise or invite foreign influence were resisted by this conservative and profoundly religious outlook. Life in Lhasa was dominated by a huge number of religious festivals, which involved most of the city's population. 68 days a year were taken up with these festivals. Since the Chinese occupation of Tibet, all of these festivals have been banned. Even though life for exiled Tibetans has changed enormously since the Chinese invasion, Tibetan culture is still deeply religious, and Buddhism is central to its way of life. Tibetan prayer flags still hang in holy places. Each time the wind blows, the prayers that are written on them are released into the universe. Buddhism arrived in Tibet in the 7th century, 1,000 years after it began in India. Focusing on the attainment of a deep understanding into the true nature of life, all Buddhists believe that the path to true enlightenment is through the practice and development of morality, meditation and wisdom. At the time these films were made, monks made up 20% of the male Tibetan population. Every Tibetan family, rich or poor, sent their youngest son to a monastery as a spiritual and religious duty. Because monks had a higher social status than peasants, Poor families readily gave up their boys in the knowledge that they would be looked after financially for life. These boys would have just arrived at the monastery. Some were as young as 7. Even though in theory they could give up being monks if they wanted, they'd expect to stay there for the rest of their lives. In a tradition that dates back to the 17th century, the Dalai Lama, or Ocean of Wisdom, is both the spiritual and secular leader of Tibet. The present Dalai Lama, who is the 14th, was found while he was still a small child. All Buddhists believe in rebirth and reincarnation, but the man they refer to as His Holiness is something very special. Some even see him as a god king. He is the reincarnation of all the previous Dalai Lamas, an enlightened being, the Bodhisattva of compassion, who returns to the human world to help others. When the 13th Dalai Lama died, his reincarnation, a 3-year-old boy called Tenzin Gyatso, was found, some 600 miles from the capital, in Amdo, a province in the far northeast, close to the Chinese border. While the Western world was at war, Tenzin and his family made the long journey to Lhasa. The 14th Dalai Lama arrived in October 1940. By now, he was 5 years old. He was accompanied by his father, mother, and 2 elder brothers, Lobsang Santen and Gyalu Thondup.
Oh, father. I think my father. Father, yes. Oh, my mother. Oh, this is elder brother, whom I bully. My mother, very, very gentle. Almost I never saw her sort of the mental state of temper. I never saw. Very gentle. Always smile. Something very nice woman. A villager, uneducated. At the beginning, illiterate. Later, with her own effort, she can read some books. Now here, yes, my father with mustache. He very much interest keep his mustache very organized way. No, not like that. So he used, of course, our family from time to time eating meat with bone. So every time from the bone, there is something, what called marrow or something. Oh. So see, he usually used to put on his mustache, then do like that.
From the moment the young Dalai Lama was found, he was revered as a god king. While he was their religious leader, he would not become head of state until he reached 18, and years of monastic study lay ahead of him. The balance of power between the government and the religious elite was maintained through the ceremonies and rituals that dominated life in Tibet. The strict adherence to protocol is clearly illustrated by the Mulam Chenmo, or Great Prayer Festival, a series of events which commemorates the day when Buddha preached the Dharma, or sacred text, for the first time. The festival starts when the monks take over the running of Lhasa from the government. The proctors of the Drepung monastery arrive carrying heavy silver maces to demand that power is handed over to them by the Kashag, or parliament. The proctors are accompanied by the Dobdobs, or monastic police, huge monks who carry long sticks and whips. The head Dobdob carries the biggest stick, of course.